Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak directly to you, my fellow British Columbians, about Donald Trump's unjustified tariffs on Canada. This is an attack on our country and on British Columbia families that will not go unanswered. We won't back down or be pushed into becoming the 51st American state. Canada is a proud and independent nation. We're proud of how we take care of each other and our neighbors, just as BC firefighters have been helping the people of Los Angeles battle fierce wildfires. We're fortunate to live in the best province and the best country in the world. When our sovereignty is challenged, we have two choices: to surrender or to stand up. Today we make the only possible choice: to stand up for British Columbians and all Canadians, to defend our workers, our businesses, and our communities. Times like this call for a plan of action that is both thoughtful and tough. Our strategy consists of three main components: to respond firmly and forcefully, to strengthen our economy at home, and to diversify our trading relationships in Canada and around the world. Canadians and Americans have always been friends and good neighbors. In many cases, we're family. We share the longest undefended border in the world. We've been partners in the fight for democracy, from storming the beaches at Normandy side by side, liberating Europe from fascism in the Second World War, to helping Ukrainians defend themselves from Putin's illegal invasion and war of aggression today. Throughout our history, British Columbians have had a unique bond with American leaders. In 1923, a huge crowd turned up in Stanley Park to greet President Harding, the first to ever visit Canada. In 1964, President Johnson came to Vancouver to sign the Columbia River Treaty, when Canada and the United States agreed to work together on flood prevention and electricity generation. One of his last acts as governor of Washington State, Governor Jay Inslee traveled to Langford to pay respects to our dearly departed friend, Premier John Horgan. President Trump's crushing 25% tariffs are a complete betrayal of the historic bond between our countries. It is a declaration of economic war against a trusted ally and friend. I understand President Trump is concerned about fentanyl in the United States. Well, we're concerned about fentanyl too. It's taken too many lives here in BC and made people and communities less safe. We welcome U.S. support in stopping the flow of fentanyl, drug precursors, and organized crime from China and Mexico. We all need to work together on this global problem. This isn't the way to do it. As British Columbians and as Canadians, we'll stand strong and united in the face of this unprecedented attack. This is not a fight we started, but we will respond firmly and forcefully. Here in BC, we support a strong Team Canada approach to stand up to Donald Trump. For our first of many steps, effective today, I have directed BC liquor sales to immediately stop buying American liquor from red states. Liquor store employees will be removing the most popular of these brands from government store shelves. I have directed government and our crown corporations, like BC Hydro, ICBC, and health authorities, to immediately stop buying American goods and services and buy Canadian. And finally, we have communicated our full support to the federal government for a comprehensive, targeted set of national tariffs against American products. We call on them to act with urgency. The Americans are bigger, but if we don't stand up for ourselves, they'll just keep coming back for more. After response, the second pillar in our strategy is to strengthen our economy here and make our province more self-sufficient. Yesterday, the province's leaders in business, labor, and First Nations met as our provincial task force on economic security and trade. We are united and clear-eyed in our goal to diversify and grow our economy and deliver a unified response. We will come out of this stronger. We won't leave our prosperity to the whims of unpredictable forces from beyond our borders. That starts with leveraging our incredible natural strengths. To that end, we have identified 10 major projects to expedite right away, including mines, renewable energy, and natural gas. That is $20 billion of investment to create over 6,000 jobs and support people in northern and rural communities. We're accelerating permit approvals on critical mining and low-carbon energy projects. Creating good-paying jobs is crucial to protecting the services like healthcare and education that we rely on every day, making sure British Columbians can thrive no matter what the world throws at us. Finally, we are diversifying our trading relationships. We're expanding trading partnerships with countries in Asia, Europe, and beyond. We already have new trade missions planned to strengthen relationships across the world. At the same time, we're working together with governments across the country to knock down trade barriers within Canada and make sure all provinces are buying Canadian first. We will never again allow ourselves to be beholden to the whims of one person in the White House. Now, I know many of you at home are worried right now about your job, about your business, about your family. And make no mistake, these tariffs do threaten workers, businesses, and whole industries, not just here at home, but on the other side of the border as well. In 1930, the US Congress passed a punishing tariff law. Loyal trading partners, including Canada, retaliated. American imports and exports dropped by 2/3. When the law first passed, unemployment in the US was at 8%. 2 years later, 3 times as many Americans were out of work, turning a depression into the Great Depression. Today's trade war threatens to be just as devastating south of the border. Canada, and BC in particular, has what the US needs. For example, a 25% tariff on Canadian mineral exports will cost American companies over $11 billion, increasing costs for the US defense industry, energy production, and manufacturing, and running directly counter to President Trump's stated goal of a golden age for Americans. Today we're at a crossroad, and the journey ahead won't be easy, but there is no place on earth I would rather be to face this threat than right here in British Columbia. We have everything we need to succeed: abundant natural wealth and clean, cheap energy, a diversified economy, and access to global markets. And our most important resource of all, you, the people who call this beautiful place home. British Columbians are hardworking, highly skilled, and resilient. Through this uncertainty, our government will be there to stand up for you and your family. As proud British Columbians and Canadians, we will meet this moment together and come out stronger on the other side. Together we'll fight, not fold. Be resolute, not roll over, because that's just who we are. Here in the true North, strong and free. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now take questions. Our reporters on the phone line, please press *1 to enter the queue. We'll start in the room. Reporters get 1 question and 1 follow-up. We're starting with Paul Johnson from Global News.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you tell us, Premier, which particular sector of the economy are you most immediately concerned about in the short term as this plays out?
So the sectors that I'm particularly worried about are our resource sectors, especially the forest sector. The forest sector was already facing punishing softwood lumber duties, and it's not clear yet whether these additional duties will contribute a further 25% to the cost of purchasing Canadian lumber for Americans. And I'm concerned on 2 fronts, obviously for Canadians, for British Columbians, the jobs in the forest industry, but also for Americans. The cost of their housing has just gone up. 1 out of every 5 sticks of lumber used in the United States comes from Canada, and it just got 25% more expensive.
1 follow-up, a broader question for how you and the other premiers and the Prime Minister are going to deal with this. Is there a sense now, the way this has played out, that it's time to punch the bully in the nose and consider things that have been off the table so far? I know this isn't so much in the provincial realm, but defense. We're about to buy a bunch of surveillance planes from Boeing, replace our fighter jets, a multi-billion-dollar deal from Lockheed Martin. Might it not be time for Canada to start considering the timing and the terms of major investments in the American economy like that at this point?
Well, the Prime Minister will speak for the national approach, but I can tell you for British Columbia, we're looking at all of the purchasing that we're doing. Just the liquor purchasing that we do here in British Columbia is $3.5 billion. We are, depending on how you do the math, in the top 5 purchasers of alcohol products in the world through our liquor distribution branch. And so whether it's liquor or whether it's materials for our hospitals or our schools or public service, all of those will be under the lens of these tariffs, and we'll be buying from other jurisdictions and Canadian products first in preference to American products. And for major defense expenditures, which I know is a priority for the Americans, for the president, he wants to see Canada putting additional money into defense. Well, we're all happy to do that work together. But these tariffs will force Canada into procuring from other countries.
Next, we go to Jason Hui from Mingpao.
Hi, Premier. With this decision today, how long do you think we could sustain ourselves in this fight with U.S.?
This is an important question for British Columbians. It's important for people at home to know that BC is the least trade-exposed province to the United States. And this is a function of deliberate strategies by governments through the years to diversify our economy, including our government, and to expand our trade across the Pacific. And it's also a function of our geography. Unlike Ontario or Manitoba or Quebec, we do have access to those global markets. Even despite the fact that we're the least affected, it will be profoundly damaging for BC families and businesses. And one of the realities that will come from this, I'm sure, for business owners, certainly for our government, is the recognition that even when the tariffs are taken off, the relationship will not go back to the way it was before. We will not put ourselves in this position again of being as exposed to the United States. And that means that we have to deepen our relationships and support businesses in taking risks to expand trading networks away from what's easiest and most convenient, which is just right across the border, just a short drive from where I can see the U.S. from here. It's that easy. But we have to push ourselves to diversify those trading relationships so we protect BC families and Canadians from future actions like this.
One follow-up. Could you give us a picture in the meeting that all the premiers across the country are on the same page now, or are we still seeing some divided opinion from some particular premiers?
Yeah, we had an emergency First Ministers meeting today with the Prime Minister, and premiers were united and resolute about the need to respond firmly and forcefully to these tariffs. And I believe that the President's actions have really brought Canadians together and focused us on the threat at hand to our jobs, to our families and our economy, and, by the way, to American families as well.
Next, we'll go to the phone lines. Reporters, please take yourself off mute and off speaker so we can hear you clearly. We will start with Nono Shen from the Canadian Press. Go ahead, Nono.
Oh, hi. I'll take my question. So, Premier, I noticed that in President Trump's executive order, he singled out BC, saying Canada's heightened domestic production of fentanyl is largely from BC. It seems to me that President Trump thinks BC is one of the players in international fentanyl trade. I wonder, may I ask your reaction on that?
Well, I've heard many justifications for these tariffs from President Trump. And I also heard him say there's literally nothing that Canada can do to prevent these tariffs from being put in place. And I take him seriously at that. I also take him seriously in his stated concern about fentanyl. I share that concern. I'm concerned about issues related to transnational organized crime and money laundering, precursor chemicals coming into Canada through the ports. And when you're talking about transnational organized crime, you have to work together. Countries have to work together. And I can't imagine a stronger ally, certainly than our provincial government. If the president wants to come up and wants to do that work, he can come to British Columbia and we can talk about the work that we can do together. I'm keen to do that because we share a goal of addressing those major issues. But I can assure you that this is not the way to do it. To have a 10% tariff on China and a 25% tariff on British Columbia and Canada, when one country, and certainly this province, wants to work with you to go at that issue, it doesn't make any sense to me. These tariffs don't make sense. They don't achieve his goal of economic growth for the United States. We provide so much of what the United States needs. And they are simply unjustified because we're here to do this work together.
No, do you have a follow-up?
Oh, yes. I have another question regarding for lots of people, for like lots of British Columbians, they are like worried about losing their jobs. They are like for lots of people, they are like anxious about how to pay their rent in the upcoming months. I wonder, do you have any message to reassure them? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Nono. For people who are concerned about their jobs, they're in trade-exposed industries where they trade particularly with the United States, and employers have made statements about the potential impact of tariffs. What I can tell you is that the federal government is working to ensure that the employment insurance program is there to support people. And just like during COVID, where we closed the gaps between federal programs that would have left British Columbians or British Columbia businesses out in the cold, we'll do that again. We'll make sure that British Columbians who are losing their jobs as a result of these tariffs are supported in two ways. One is with programs to ensure that you and your family get through this. And the other is by growing and strengthening our economy so that we have jobs that are not dependent on the United States, using our resources to ensure that we're delivering that strong and independent economy so you and your family have a prosperous future here, regardless of whatever happens south of the border in terms of the politics there.
Next, we'll go to Wolf Deppner, Black Press. Go ahead, Wolf.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, Premier. Thank you for taking my question. Question regarding the expedited resource projects that you mentioned during the opening part of your speech. Can you give us a timeline as to when these projects might be going ahead? What is sort of the process also in terms of getting these projects sped up? Might you recall the legislature? Thank you.
Thanks, Wolf. So as part of our work with the Economic Task Force, we put a call out to the major business organizations in the province, and we said, what projects are you aware of that your members have that are maybe hung up in some kind of process or could be expedited that could quickly get people employed, especially those projects that are not dependent on the American market. They provided us with extensive lists of projects. And the public service has been going through that list. Out of that list, and we had our own internal list within the province, we've identified 10 projects that we believe can be moved along quite quickly and get shovels in the ground, get people hired around construction. There's energy projects, there's mining projects. And these are particularly projects that are in smaller, rural, and remote communities that are going to be disproportionately affected by these tariffs. That's just the beginning. That list of 10 projects is just a fraction of the list as a whole, and we'll be working closely with the task force to address not just these specific projects, but also the underlying challenge that led them to get hung up in the first place, so that we come out of this on the other end stronger, more prosperous, and more efficient as a jurisdiction to do business in, and more attractive to jurisdictions around the world other than the United States.
Wolf, do you have a follow-up?
Oh, and the legislature, might you recall the legislature to get some legislation out on these projects?
Yeah, we will have legislation, Wolf, that relates to expediting projects in the province, and we're going to be there very shortly. I look forward to seeing you there.
Great. We will go now to Thomas Seal from Bloomberg. Go ahead, Thomas.
Hi, Premier. As Attorney General, you took action to curb money laundering in BC, and as someone else mentioned, the executive order mentions the FinTrack report by name and BC by name. You've spoken recently yourself about how more needs to be done on this file. So do you think there was some failures from the federal government in Canada to allow it to get to this point, notwithstanding maybe the US approach? And do you think more will finally be done on this file? And if so, what needs to be done?
Yeah, I mean, British Columbians have been ringing the alarm bell on concerns about money laundering and transnational organized crime for a number of years now, and we did a full public inquiry on the issue of this money flowing through our province. We've made a number of reforms to increase transparency around who's buying properties, to reform issues related to the luxury automotive sector, and to ensure that protections are in place. And you know, my concern about that, and my strong desire that the federal government do better on that issue, does not justify for one moment what Donald Trump is proposing to do to Canadian families and Canadian jobs. This is an issue that, by definition, is international in nature, requires countries to work closely together as trusted partners. And I believe that working closely with the United States, Canada could make some incredible traction on this. And I ultimately hope that that's what happens. But these tariffs are actually an obstacle to that work happening, because I would say trust is now at an all-time low, that there are not good dialogues happening. And I do think we need to do that work. I think if President Trump wants to do that work, British Columbia is here. Encourage them, come. I think we're as I say, the best province and the best country in the world. Let's sit down and figure out what we can do at the provincial level. And I know that we can convince the federal government to do this work, but I guarantee that tariffs are not the route to get there. They are not connected. They are not justified. It will only hurt people on both sides of the border.
Thomas, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you. Yeah, just on the BC liquor decision, have you scoped how much this pulling from the shelves and the removal of red state purchases, how much the dollar figure is that applies to that? You mentioned an overall figure, but what's the subset that you're making a decision on?
So thanks for the question. In terms of the impact on individual producers, we don't have that number for you right off the hop, but we do expect to be able to have that for you. The goal here is that this is a short-lived set of tariffs, that this is a short-lived set of actions. Our hope is that British Columbians that like to drink Jack Daniels, they can drink their Jack Daniels. I had a particular experience early on in my drinking career that with Jack Daniels, that it's not my drink of choice. But for those who do like it, I want you to be able to get it. But the reality is that there are jurisdictions in the states that are supporting this trade war against us, that are supporting these tariffs against us. It's not the California wines. Mr. Trump was clear about what he thought about California and LA. But we're trying to send a message to specific decision makers. We're interconnected. We're tied. Decisions that you make about us also affect you. And that's what we're trying to achieve here. I think at the end of the day, when you talk about the bourbon trade, this is a small piece of the overall bourbon trade. But just because the Americans are bigger than us doesn't mean that that's a reason to roll over in a moment like this. We're going to stand strong and take the actions we can.
Next, we go to Richard Zussman, Global News.
Premier, one of the things that is thought President Trump is interested in is Canadian water. We have abundant water supply here in British Columbia. What can you do to ensure that our water in this province is protected from any measures from the United States?
Well, Richard, your question's about water, but I think it's about a more fundamental thing, and I can't believe we're actually having this conversation. What started as a joke about the 51st state, I think has become a credible threat to Canadian sovereignty, with the president saying that he wants to use tariffs to force us into a subordinate economic union with the United States of some kind. Now, we're not the 51st state. Our water is not for sale. And partnerships and working together on the issues of shared concern, there is history that is generations long between our two countries on that, and we are keen to do that work. But the fact that we have to ask that question, well, what about our water and what about our national sovereignty in the face of the comments from the president, I think really reflects that this isn't just about the jobs. This is also about who we are as Canadians and who we are as British Columbians, and ensuring that we're defending our country in a moment of what appears to be a serious threat.
Richard, do you have a follow-up?
I'm good, thank you.
For our last question, we will go to Mary Brook from Island Social Trends. Go ahead, Mary.
Hi, Premier. Can you tell us a bit about the food security aspects of BC while these tariffs are going on? I'm thinking farmer support, households, anything in that area?
Thanks. So my concern about food for British Columbians who are already struggling with global impacts that are driving up the cost of groceries on the shelf is that the Canadian dollar is likely to take a significant hit as a result of these tariffs. Now, in some ways, that's helpful in the sense that it blunts the impact of the tariffs. It reduces their impact on our ability to sell products to U.S. customers, and it preserves jobs. In other ways, it's really unhelpful when we're buying food that's imported from the United States. We export a lot of agricultural products to the United States. Americans will find that their pasta is more expensive. They will find that greenhouse products that are grown all along the border from Canada, that transit the border and head into the northern U.S. are more expensive. They'll find that avocados are more expensive because of targeting Mexico. And for Canadians, we know a few things. One is that our supply managed industries like dairy and eggs and chicken and so on will continue to be unaffected by this. But products that are imported from the United States will be more expensive. But my message to British Columbians and to Canadians, my hope is that given the choice, when you're looking at two products on the shelf, I was at Costco, I was looking at the Captain Highliner fish, I was looking at the Jane's fish. The Jane's had the big Canadian maple leaf on it. We make the Canadian choice. You choose the Canadian product when you have a good substitution to make. That'll do two things. One is it'll help keep your costs down in a time of strain around affordability. But the other is it will send a message.
Mary, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thanks. Supports for everyday Canadians or British Columbians. Will there be emergency supports other than the EI for employees? Will small businesses and individual households be given support during this likely recessionary time? Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, we're working closely with the federal government. Because they're prorogued, they advise us that there won't be new programs, but they believe that they can use the EI program that they already have, as well as additional federal programs to support business and support individuals. Our experience during COVID was that there were gaps, there were insufficient supports in some areas, and so that will likely be the case again. Once we have a picture of the federal government programs, we'll be able to fill in those pieces. It's also why we have the task force that is working on trade and economic security. Around that table, we have the major sectors of BC's economy represented, so they can identify for us where federal programs are not meeting the need, where they're either missing or insufficient, and then we're going to be able to top those up and address them. Our goal around supports for business is that rather than just getting them through this process, we're also supporting them in accessing other markets, in strengthening and diversifying their customer base, so that they're less dependent for the long haul on the United States. And we're underlining that provincial and national goal of diversifying our economy.
Thank you. That's it for today's announcement. If you have any follow-up questions, please email premier.media@gov.bc.ca.
Thanks very much, everybody.